All right, today we're breaking down a really powerful technical analysis tool called Bollinger Bands. We're going to cover what they are, how you can read them, and a couple of key strategies you can put into practice right away.
Okay, let's start with a simple idea. I want you to think of every technical indicator you learn as a brand new tool for your trading toolbox. I mean, it's just like a carpenter, right? You're not going to use a hammer to saw a piece of wood, and in trading, it's the same deal. Different tools are best for different market situations. So, the more tools you have in that box, the better you're going to be at adapting to whatever the market throws at you. And our goal today is to add a really cool specialized tool to your collection, Bollinger Bands. Okay, so let's dive in. What are these things, really? Let's break this tool down and see what it's made of.
So, at its heart, Bollinger Bands are all about measuring a market's volatility. It's basically a way to see how wild or how calm the market is, just by looking at your chart.
When you put Bollinger Bands on a chart, you're always going to see these three distinct lines: an upper band, a middle band, and a lower band. The line in the middle, that's kind of the foundation of the whole thing. It's just a simple moving average, usually over 20 periods, and it basically represents the recent price trend. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The outer bands, the top and bottom ones, are calculated using a statistical concept called standard deviation. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a way to create a dynamic channel around the price. And don't worry, you don't need to be a math whiz to get this. The concept is super visual. Statistically speaking, about 68% of all price action happens within one standard deviation of the average.
But Bollinger Bands use two standard deviations. Why? Well, because that captures even more of the price data, creating a much more comprehensive channel for us to watch.
And that brings us to the most crucial point, that number, 95%. The bands are set up to contain about 95% of all the recent price moves. So, when the price does move outside the bands, it's a pretty big deal. Okay, so this brings us to the number one job of Bollinger Bands. They're a fantastic visual indicator of volatility. All you have to do is look at how far apart the bands are. It's really as simple as this. When the bands expand and get really far apart, that means volatility is high. The market is moving. And when the bands contract or squeeze together, well, that tells you things are quiet and volatility is low. All right, now that we know what these bands are and what they're telling us, let's look at how we can actually use them. Let's start with our first strategy, the Bollinger Bounce. The whole idea behind the bounce is that the price tends to return to the middle of the bands. You can almost think of the outer bands like rubber bands or bumpers, pushing the price back toward the middle. Okay, let's look at a real chart. You can see the price has just come up and touched the top of the band. So, based on what we just talked about, where do you think it's gonna go next? If you said down, back toward the middle, you got it. Look at that. The price bounced right off that upper band and headed back towards the middle. That is a picture-perfect example of the bounce strategy. Awesome. Let's move on to our second strategy. And this one builds directly on that idea of reading volatility. It's called the Bollinger Squeeze. So a squeeze is exactly what it sounds like. It's when the bands get really, really close together, squeezing the price. This tells you the market is super quiet, but it's often the calm before the storm. A squeeze often comes right before a huge breakout. So, when you see this tight squeeze, you know a big move is probably coming. The only question is, which way? Now, look at this chart. The bands are squeezing together, and it looks like the price is just starting to poke its head above that top band. And boom! Just as you'd expect, after breaking that upper band, the price absolutely shot up. That's a classic Bollinger Squeeze in action. The market went from super low volatility to a massive burst of high volatility. So there you have it. We've just added a brand new, really versatile tool to your toolbox. So what's the big takeaway here, and what should you do next?
Honestly, the best way to learn this stuff is just to get your hands dirty. So here's what to do now. First, add Bollinger Bands to your charts. Then just watch. Watch how the price interacts with those three bands. Try to spot those bounce and squeeze setups as they happen in real time. And remember, these are just two of many strategies out there. And as you're practicing, just keep this great quote from trader Tom Basso in mind. It's a great reminder that tools like Bollinger Bands are awesome, they're powerful, but they're just one part of a much bigger picture that includes your own mindset and how you manage risk.